Well, good morning, everyone. I hope that all who are watching this had a fantastic 4th of July. So I want to continue the theme of freedom pretty much throughout the week. So yesterday we talked about the fact that Christ has set us free. So if you're a Christian, Christ has set you free. I told a little bit of my story of the captivity of needing the approval of others and how Jesus, in loving me, has set me free from that captivity. But I know, and I didn't address this because we didn't have time, and I'm going to spend most of the rest of the week addressing this. I know that there might have been people who hear that or watched that who aren't Christians and who equate Christianity with bondage, and true freedom is apart from the rules, the regulations, and the thou shalt nots of Christianity. And it's okay to admit that. Like, we can't have an honest conversation if you can't admit that when you look at Christianity, you do not see something that is in conjunction with freedom. You see something that is in opposition with freedom. Because we want to do the things we want to do. We want to be free to engage in whatever we engage in. And we're like, well, Christianity won't let me do that. These are some thoughts I gleaned from Tim Keller. He's a pastor in New York City. He's really smart. So when I say smart things, it's usually just because I read them from somebody else who is really smart. But it would be a lot easier for us to engage in what we believe to be freedom if there was no God. Now, I don't believe that that's true freedom, as we're going to see throughout the week, but it would be easier for us to engage in true freedom as we falsely oftentimes think of it if there is no God. Now, most of us won't say that. What we will say, though, is that there is a God. It's just difficult to know what his will is. And so what we want to do is we want to live however we choose to live. That kind of sounds like our modern definition of freedom. Now, I'll submit to you, and this is from Tim Keller, I gleaned it from him, I will submit to you that true freedom isn't found in doing whatever you want. True freedom is found when you find yourself living in the environment you were created to live with the desires you were created to have. True freedom is found in living in the environment you were created to live in with the desires that you were created to have. And what I want to do is I just want to logically show us over the next couple days why true freedom, this kind of freedom that we think exists if we live however we want to live, that's not actual freedom. Like, we actually find ourselves in bondage if we try that. The first thing I want to show us is that we can't even decide what to do with this concept of freedom. Well, I'm free to choose whatever I want to do. Okay, well, what is that you want to do? Yesterday, like I mentioned, was the 4th of July, which makes today the 5th of July, in case you're curious. But yesterday was the 4th of July, and many of us were confronted with interesting decisions, right? Food-wise, many of us, there was food laying around that was just extremely tasty and extremely unhealthy. Right? Like, that's everybody's 4th of July. You went to a barbecue, you were sitting poolside, you were hanging out watching fireworks, and there was food. You knew, like, all these cookies and cakes and cupcakes. We had some of that at our house. And you're just like, this isn't good for me. But you're like, but it tastes so good, right? What's happening in that moment? Internal conflict. You're like, well, I want to eat healthy, but I also want to eat this, which isn't healthy. And it's like, what do I choose? Like, I have the freedom to choose, but I don't even know what I want to choose. Let's get a little more serious for a second. Say you're in a committed relationship to someone, and someone else that you're not in a committed relationship to, who's very attractive, walks into the room. And all of a sudden you have in your heart competing desires because you have this lust for this person who you saw just walk into the room, but at the same time you have this desire to be committed to the person you're committed to. And the question then becomes, like, what do we do? How do we choose? What's going on in that moment? And if we're living a life that says there is no God by all practical purposes, what do we even use to gauge our morality? What is right or wrong in those situations? And what I hope this does is this begins to illuminate that true freedom, it's a scary thing to think about because we don't even know what we want. And how many of us, let's just ask the question, how many of us, we thought we knew what we wanted, and we chose to do the thing, and in hindsight, we look back and go, that was a stupid decision. I wish somebody was there to tell me not to do that, because that decision that I made that I thought was freedom actually put me in bondage. So I'm going to leave it at that because that's where we're going to pick up tomorrow. But I'll also leave us with Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 that tells us this: For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to the yoke of slavery. Freedom is found in having new desires, due to the desire to live the way that we were created to live in the environment that we were created to live in. Hope you guys have a great Tuesday.